This is St. Louis Blues hockey.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. It's time for the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show.
Presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut Brewing Company on 101 ESPN.
Oscar to the line, into the middle. That's Neighbors. Bounced it to himself off the wall. Nice play. Through to Mayu, shooting, and Tarasov keeps his team within a goal.
What a heck of a play by Jake Neighbors. You see the way he chipped it to himself, jumps on the puck, reloads quickly, and then finds a seam. I don't know how he saw Logan Mayu through the seam there, but what a chance there for the young defenseman.
Shen took it back into the middle. They go! They score! Neighbors from Stenberg and Shen. 4-2 St. Louis. 7:58 to go, third period. Buchnevich off the wall. Parayko into traffic. And Tarasov another save. Recovered, and Thomas shot it wide. That puck off the end boards. Back to Buchnevich. Into the slot. Thomas! Score! One-timer for Robert Thomas. And a 3-goal lead for the Blues. And the Blues fans in South Florida can be heard tonight. Blues, they go to the penalty kill. If they shoot it to the net, it could be an empty net goal. It is. Short-handed 2, 6-2 St. Louis. Robert Thomas with the empty net goal, and the Blues lead by 4.
How about that? I did not have it on my bingo card tonight against the Florida Panthers, who, yes, they were going up against the backup goaltender, but it actually has been their better goaltender this season, and there's just a history for the Blues playing against goalies that they've never seen before of success going against that goaltender. But the Blues not only had success against them, they scored 6, something that they have not done yet this season. Welcome, everyone, into our fourth period, the extended post-game coverage on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. Alongside our producer, Jordan Deacon, I'm Alex Ferrario. As the Blues pick up the win as they take down the Panthers. What a statement win for the Blues this could be tonight, and I'll emphasize the could be portion of it, because if things go south on Monday, then it's just the inconsistencies that we've talked about. But with the exception of that New York Rangers game, the Blues have strung together a little nice stretch. They beat the Blackhawks. They, of course, lose to that Nashville Predators team. They shut out the Winnipeg Jets. You lose to the New York Rangers. You pick points up in 3 of 4 games, but overall for the Blues, you string some nice games together. Defensively, goaltending-wise, you've been solid this last stretch. And then you show up with this one. 6 goals against the against the Florida Panthers. And man, if you could find a way to beat Tampa and have another performance like you did in this one tonight, that's a really nice stretch of hockey going into their Christmas break. So we've got lots to get into. We'll have our soundbite of the night. We'll hear from Jim Montgomery, and we'll have our final look. But first things first, let's hit our Ted Drew's 3 takeaways.
It's time for tonight's 3 takeaways. Let it snow. Presented by Ted Drew's Christmas Trees, where tradition tastes great and the holidays feel right at home.
All right, third takeaway has to be Jonathan Berggren. It has to be Berggren. What a find. Typically when you claim guys on waivers, I don't know if there's a lot of expectations. Like the ones that I can most recently remember, Kasperi Kapanen, guy that they brought in when they sold pieces off, and they're like, look, he just gives us a chance. It's a former first-round pick. Let's see what he has to do. And Kapanen was an okay player, but it never really amounted to anything. He got first-line opportunities. He got third-line opportunities, and he never completed the ability to keep that spot. He never stole that competition. And what happened? Blues moved on from him. Not only did they claim a Berggren and give him a lower role when he first came in, because if I'm not mistaken, Berggren's first game played on the third line with Dvorsky and Pius Suter. They were the best line in that game, like by far. I think their Corsi percentage was 90%. Then he starts that game against the Rangers with Dvorsky and Suter. Was good, but they wanted more from the top line. And what did they do? They put Berggren on the top line, and that line went out there, was the best when they were together, and Robert Thomas had 5 total shot attempts on that line with Berggren, Buchnevich. And then he gets catapulted to the top line tonight, not only goes out there, and once again, the best Corsi rating on this team went to Berggren, Buchnevich, Thomas. Scoring chances 4, 6-2 in favor of that line. High danger chances 4, 2-0 in favor of that line. And by the way, I'm pretty sure they went up against that Sam Bennett line tonight on the matchups because Florida had their first the line changes, but I'll have to wait and look through that shift chart to see where kind of it fell. But they went out there, were the best line on the ice. And by the way, Pavel Buchnevich, 2 assists tonight. Berggren, 3 points, a goal and 2 assists. Robert Thomas, 2 goals and an assist. That line combined for 8 points tonight. I tweeted out Chris Johnston's article from last year where he put together the best waiver wire pickups since the 2020-2021 season. And I said, I will be fascinated that at the end of this season, whatever it looks like for Berggren, I'm going to butcher that for the rest of my life. I'll be curious to see what his numbers are, what he does for the Blues, and where he ranks on that list. Like Tolvanen was towards the top. And if people remember Tolvanen, a former first-round pick that was claimed off of waivers by Seattle from the Nashville Predators, which I actually think on BK and Ferrario, I said the Blues should have put a claim in on him. I just don't think they were higher up on Nashville in that waiver wire claim. But Tolvanen finished that season in 48 games with Seattle with 16 goals and 27 points, was a +10, and helped Seattle make the playoffs and scored 3 goals and 8 points in 14 games for Seattle that season. Like that, that's a pretty darn good pickup. I really wonder what it's going to look like for Berggren at the end of this season because, man, if he is paired up with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich, you could be seeing a lot more offense. What I really like about this is it feels like because Berggren is a playmaker also, he turns Robert Thomas into the shooter on that line. Thomas had 4 shots on goal tonight and 6 shot attempts and had 2 goals. One was an empty netter, but still, that is a line that they could have found something. And I don't know if it always sticks together. I don't know if Berggren is a top-line player for the rest of his career. But it's a hot line like we saw of Holloway and Kyrou last year. And, man, if you could get the best out of Thomas and Buchnevich at even strength and on special teams, you've got a really special group going for the Blues. So that absolutely is my first takeaway in this game tonight. Second takeaway, this is another really good defensive game by the Blues. And I know people are going to kind of laugh at what I'm about to say, but in their last 5 straight, I actually think the Blues have played strong defensively in every one of them. And you're laughing at that is because, Alex, you said 5 straight strong defensively. They've won 3 of those. Yes, Blackhawks, I thought they were excellent defensively. They lost that Predators game 5-2. That wasn't because of a bad defense. That was more so, I think, just a rough game for goaltending. That was the one that Joel Hofer struggled in on a couple of goals that got away from him, and Nashville made you pay. But then they go out and shut down the Winnipeg Jets, both goaltending and defensively. That was a solid performance. The Rangers game, I thought that was a great defensive game. It's just 3-on-3 overtime that has been terrible for the Blues. Also a great goaltending game. And then tonight, look, I understand the Panthers are banged up, and people will say, well, it's the Panthers. They don't have Barkov or Tkachuk. Fine. But they have also scored 112 goals so far this season, which in the Eastern Conference is 3rd most. You put it into perspective with the exception of the absurd season that the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars are having, they would have put up the same amount of goals as the Minnesota Wild have this season. That's a really good offense. And you, on top of your goaltending playing great, allowed a total of 6 high-danger scoring chances at 5-on-5. To put that into perspective, the Blues have averaged about 10 high-danger scoring chances given up this season, and they gave up 6 tonight. 4 of those 6 were given up in the second period. So outstanding game defensively. Gave up some opportunities there at times, but your goaltending came up with the saves that you need to. And Joel Hofer obviously had another solid performance. But, man, when you think about guys like Logan Mailloux who had some really good stand-ups at the blue line, when you think of what Broberg did tonight, 21 minutes and 11 seconds, Parayko, who was a +2, they were a combined +4 that both played north of 21 minutes. Fowler had some really good performances on top of him picking up an assist. And then Justin Falk, who had the goal tonight. This was a team. Oh, by the way, Tyler Tucker, kudos to you, man. 17 and a half minutes, 8 shot attempts, 3 blocked shots, 2 hits, 2 giveaways. That was a solid team effort, and your defense is once again stingy in this one. And then the third takeaway for me, and I know they won, and somebody tweeted at me about the goalie interference and said, stop crying about it. I'm not going to stop crying about it because I think it's a joke. Like, how do we not know what goaltender interference is? We spent so much time discussing in other sports, in football, what is a catch, what is not a catch. Goaltending should not be this difficult. And I saw the statement that the NHL put out there after the review that went into it. And let me pull it up so I can read it for everybody. The Situation Room supported the referee's call on the ice that stated Seth Jones and A.J. Greer's presence in the crease did not affect Joel Hofer's ability to play his position prior to the goal. I'm sorry, that's just a joke. Like, this is the gray area for me that I don't understand when it comes to goaltender interference. If you look at the rule book, if there's a presence in the crease that wasn't supported from the defending team that makes contact with the goaltender, then it's viewed goalie interference. But they allow the officials to determine if the goaltender is able to reestablish himself and make the save. Regardless if he was reestablished and could have made the save, there was contact with the goaltender in the crease. And not only in the crease and then they got out of it, no, they stayed in the crease when the shot took place. Like, it's the same thing that happened with the Seattle Kraken that never got overturned and resulted in them going to overtime and losing. And remember, callback for you to the Vancouver Canucks game where Evander Kane basically or barely touched the goaltender, and they called that goalie interference and overturned a goal that I actually thought wasn't goalie interference. To me, this is easy. Was there contact made with the goaltender? Yes. Follow-up question. Did the contact happen because the defending team pushed that player in the goaltender? No. Great. Goaltender interference. I don't care if the goalie was able to reestablish himself or get set in the crease. If there was impact between the offensive player and the goalie in the crease, then it's goalie interference. It's the same thing if you bump into a goalie and the play is away from the goalie. They'll whistle it and they'll call it a penalty. So it had zero impact on the game. I'm more talking about the bigger picture on this. The NHL still doesn't know what goalie interference is. And I know I'm trying to make it black and white, and there's a ton of areas that you'll be able to sift through and say, well, what about this and this and this? To me, I think you make it black and white. Did you touch the goalie in the crease? Yeah. Did the other team push you? No? Cool. Goalie interference, goal doesn't count. Black and white. But that's me, a commoner, and I think they'll keep it the way it is, but it will just continue to incentivize frustration for all of us. So that's the Ted Drew's 3 takeaways as we are here on our extended post-game coverage after a Blues 6-2 winner against the Florida Panthers. Let's do this. We're still waiting for audio from Florida, so let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll pick our soundbite of the night. We'll see if we get some Jim Montgomery audio, and then we'll close it down with our final look. 6-2 the final score as the Blues take down the Florida Panthers tonight. Alex Ferrario with you. This is St. Louis Blues hockey. Final time tonight here on our fourth period. Extended postgame coverage here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario back with you. Again, we're live up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Someone asked a roster question that I want to get to momentarily. But before we hit our soundbite of the night, again, the stat that I had, so they had 5 players with 2 or more points in the game tonight. Neighbors, Stenberg, Berggren, Buchnevich, Thomas. All 5 of those players had 2 or more points in the hockey game. It's the first time they have had that many players with 2 or more points in the game. The closest they had to it was 2 guys who had 4 points. Other than that, it's been a whole lot of guys with 2 points, 2 guys with 2 points, things like that. So a lot of guys contributing, especially when all of these injuries have continued to pile up. So that leads us to our soundbite of the night, which we asked Steve Ott about this a couple of games ago, if it felt like the Blues were starting to find their identity. Take a listen.
The soundbite of the night is presented by Rocket Convenience Stores. Fuel your car and your daily cravings at Rocket Convenience Stores.
Oh, for sure. We're not beating ourselves by any means, and that's the biggest thing. It's we're in every game in the last 2 here, and that's very important for this team as we're trying to get healthy.
And that's just it. Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I'll save this for the final look, but I do wonder that if they could find a way to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, if it at least catapults this team. You know, you head into the break 500, you get some healthy players back, you get some guys that are performing well currently. It's the mixture that could create some positive energy for the St. Louis Blues. So while we wait a little bit longer on some Jim Montgomery audio, I want to address this question because we had this over up on my Twitter account at Ferrario101 ESPN. Somebody said, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but when guys start to get healthy, I'm curious how you would assemble the lines and the roster because that's a lot of guys that you don't want to lose. So before I get into that, follow up on that. Somebody said this is exactly what happened with Jakub Vrana when he came over to the Blues. 10 goals, 4 assists, and 14 points in 20 games. Certainly a fan base with a short memory. Berggren is going to cool off. He's just excited to be here. 25-year-old prospects just don't break. So appreciate Chattin' Puck for sending over his positive mindset, but it's a fair point of remembering certain guys that had success in a small sample size, but then it kind of dissipated. My only retort to that with Jakub Vrana and why these two are very separate, in my opinion, is at the time that Vrana came to the St. Louis Blues, that was in the midst of them shipping out all of their other bodies. O'Reilly was gone. Tarasenko was gone. Mikkola was gone. They traded their top guys, and they needed to recoup some of those. And so they traded for Vrana with some upside, who was playing poorly in Detroit. He was in the American Hockey League and said, we'll take a chance on this kid. He was good. He did score 10 goals and 14 points in 20 games. But he also was a +2 in 14 games. And if I remember correctly, Jakub Vrana was never a player that was going in hard on forechecks. He was never a player that was sound defensively. He never read the game properly. He was a goal scorer that floated through games and waited for his opportunity to strike. And it's no coincidence that he's not in the NHL anymore. He's playing over in the Swedish Hockey League. That is not the same thing for Berggren. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act as if Berggren's going to become a 30-goal scorer. But Berggren, who had played in a third or a fourth line role his entire time with the Detroit Red Wings, still scored 12 goals in 75 games for Detroit as a guy who was getting 12 or 13 minutes a night. And yes, prospects 25 years old just don't break. But what they do is not live up to expectations where they're at and get glossed over by higher prospects that are higher selections in the draft. And sometimes those guys just need a chance. I can present to you Morgan Geekie if you'd like, who was with Carolina, went to Seattle, Seattle, was fine for them, but was a third or fourth line player that was inconsistent, and they said, nope, not enough. We're not going to re-sign him. Boston signed him, scratched him for the first 5 games, and then when Jim Montgomery was let go, they put him on the top line. And then Morgan Geekie has become a player that now has 25 goals in the National Hockey League. To me, this is all work ethic based. This has nothing to do with, Verana flamed out after a hot start. Yeah, but he never played the two-way game that Berggren presented. Berggren has the defensive side of his game with upside offensively, and I'll stand by it. I have no idea what this guy is going to become, but I can already tell you that work ethic is significantly better than what Jakub Verana's was. And he's making the other guys around him better. Verana wasn't making other guys around him better. He was the guy that was scoring the goals. In 2 games, Jonathan Berggren has turned Robert Thomas into a guy that has 2 goals, 3 points, and 11 shot attempts. That's in 4 periods. 4 periods. Robert Thomas has 11 shot attempts. How many times has that happened this season? Not a lot. So, yeah, I'll stick with my optimism on Jakub Verana. Okay, now answering the question before we hear from Jim Montgomery. Here's how I think this is going to play out. Again, this is total speculation on my part, but if it continues to bode well with Berggren and Stenberg and how good they looked, and by the way, we've glossed over the fact that Otto Stenberg had another really good game. Also, he had a multi-point game, so he was one of those 5 that I mentioned earlier. If it continues to look well with these guys, Snuggerud's on this trip, which to me is a sign he probably will be the first one back. Kyrou is skating but didn't travel with the team, which means he's very close behind Snuggerud, probably both returning after the Christmas break. When both return, nothing needs to happen. That's why they sent Hugh McGing down. They have 1 extra player right now, and it's their defenseman in Matt Kessel. So you can add 2 forwards to this team and not affect your roster. So what would happen is Snuggerud and Kyrou come back, and in my opinion, Fabry and Joseph become healthy scratches for the Blues. Be however line combinations you feel, I think you keep the top 2 as is, and Kyrou and Snuggerud join the 3rd line of Dvorsky, and then Suter dips down to a 4th line role with Sundqvist and Toropchenko. I don't mean anything by it. I just think Suter unfortunately hasn't played as well as Stenberg and Berggren have. Then from there is where it gets really interesting. Now you have Holloway and Walker that won't be coming back until probably late January post-Olympics. So that doesn't really require much. They'll be on the IR and they'll bide their time. Gives a little bit more of a leash for some of these guys if they're performing well. But when Bukestad returns, then the probable move they would pull is Fabry goes on waivers. Because really your options are send Stenberg down, who doesn't have to go through waivers, which if Stenberg's playing well, I don't see the Blues doing that. Now, if he struggles or hits a wall, maybe they do that. Or maybe it's just asset management and you want to keep Fabry, send Stenberg down. I wouldn't. I think Stenberg's looked good in 3 games, and I would keep him with the roster. You're more likely to probably sneak Fabry through waivers, and if he accepts the role, then he goes down and he probably comes back up. Or you decide to put Joseph through waivers, which, again, I don't expect them to do. Feels like they really like Matthew Joseph. That sets the roster for then. But then when you get to the Holloway and Walker healthy, then you got some real roster decisions to make. Then you potentially send Stenberg back. Then maybe you do put Joseph through waivers, or trades happen. But regardless, all of this, by the way, is barring Berggren and Stenberg could keep up their consistent, dominant play. But for 3 games, it's been consistent for him, so I don't see how all of a sudden that would dissipate. So for me, that's how I would view this moving forward. And then from there, you just see how guys continue to play once players get healthy. Because the cliche saying in hockey is, it'll all work itself out. Let's hear a little from Jim Montgomery. We didn't get any audio from Florida, so we're going to take you back to a pregame comment that Jim Montgomery had about that top line of Berggren, Thomas, and Buchnevich.
It's time to hear from the head coach, Jim Montgomery, presented by Fisher Window and Door Store, offering quality American-made Marvin windows and doors. Visit their showrooms in Brentwood or East Alton, Illinois.
Yes, you see that they see the game. commonly in the offensive zone and off the rush. But there's no question that Berggren has really good hockey sense and real good vision.
This was another question that I got, if not a question, I guess a statement. Somebody said to me, it's nice to get a shooter's mentality with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. And again, I don't think Berggren has a shooter's mentality. I actually think Berggren is a playmaker just like Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. What I think it does is it forces one of those guys to do something they're not the most comfortable with, and that's a shot-first mentality. Again, Robert Thomas had 11 shot attempts in 4 periods with Berggren on that line. Berggren finds guys in the right place, but he is also a puck hound, too. He goes after loose pucks behind the net. He wins board battles and then finds guys like Thomas or Buchnevich in the right areas, but he's also got the shot. It's kind of like you've got 3 guys that a goaltender's not sure what he's going to do. Is he going to shoot or is he going to pass? And it creates a little bit of confusion. So I am fascinated with this line, and I'm really curious of what it looks like as we move further and further. Because I do agree with the person that messaged me saying, let's not get over our skis. This has happened before for Blues fans, and it phased out pretty quick. Sure, but, man, to do what he has done and make an impact in 3 games against some tough opponents like the Winnipeg Jets, the New York Rangers, and then tonight the Florida Panthers, that's a statement type of game. All right, before we close it down, let's hit tonight's final look.
It's time to take a look back at tonight's game with the final look.
Driven by Pure Performance. Only stop for all your aftermarket vehicle needs.
Let's go final look with big picture here. Does it mean much? No. Mostly because of the inconsistency for the Blues. I'm not going to be a fraud and act as if, they fixed their problems. This is one game. It's one game that they won because they lost against the Rangers. Now, if I want to be the ultimate optimist and look big picture and say, man, I think they've played really good hockey defensively and goaltending-wise for 5 straight. It's just been goalie slipped up for one and your offense didn't appear in the other. But, again, I'll be a realist and say that's one game. Even if you beat Tampa. That's 2 games. Here's why I could see, and could see is my emphasis here, just so people don't call me, he's a homer, you get paid by the Blues, blah, blah, blah. If you find a way to beat Tampa, which, by the way, Tampa lost earlier this evening. Let me see. No, they're currently winning with 90 seconds to play against the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's going to snap a 2-game losing streak for them. Vasilevsky's back, so he'll be in between the pipes. Which, by the way, think about that for a minute. If they see Vasilevsky against Tampa, you went up against Spencer Knight, Jussi Saros, Connor Hellebuck, Shesterkin. No, not Shesterkin. Yes, Shesterkin. I always get him and Sorokin confused. And then Tarasov. Tarasov is like one of these things, is not like the other. Still a goalie that they've never seen before, and we know how that goes. But that's 4, quality goaltenders that you've picked up wins or points in 3 of those 4. And then if you get Vasilevsky, man, if you find a way to win that game, that's back-to-back wins, which it's not 3 in a row. I'm fully aware of that. But that's back-to-back wins. That's points in 5 of 6. And you put yourself back at 500 going into the Christmas break. Again, could all be for naught. You come out of the Christmas break and you struggle once again and you're thinking, geez, what changed here? But, and a big but here, it also could be a confidence booster because if you believe what Steve Ott said, that they're finding their identity and you get back to 500 and you pull out wins with all of these injured bodies that you have gone through this season with, and you're getting healthy bodies back, you found a couple of players that are playing above their expectation, that's a recipe for a team to potentially go on a stretch run. And again, none of it matters if you don't win against Tampa or if you lay an egg coming out of the Christmas break because you got that dreadful Nashville Predators team that's beaten you up twice already this season. But man, that's a really positive mindset for a group of guys that have gone through a lot of crap in the first 2 months of the season, coming out of the Christmas break with some much-needed rest, potentially some healthy bodies back in the lineup. Could be the start of a run for the Blues, if they could all those things combined together. We'll see what happens, though, to Monday night before the Christmas break. The Blues will play that final game of this road trip and the final game before they're off for 4 straight They'll take on the Tampa Bay Lightning Monday in Tampa. We'll have Puck Drop for you starting at 6 o'clock. Chris Kerber, Joe Vitale on the call. A 5 o'clock pregame. That'll be right here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. Appreciate everybody being in a part of the program and joining in on the YouTube chat. Also on our Twitter account at Ferrario 101 ESPN. Hope everyone has a great rest of their evening. With Jordan Deacon, our great producer, I'm Alex Ferrario. We will talk to you Monday. The Blues take on the Lightning after a 6-2 win against the Panthers tonight, right here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN.
Thanks for listening to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show.
Presented by Scott Lee